Welcome to the WCN 2025 podcast series. This is the official podcast of the World Congress of Neurology on the road to our global meeting in Seoul, South Korea this October. I'm your host, Ksenia Pochigaeva, and in each episode, we go beyond the program to spotlight the stories, the people, and the global initiatives shaping the future of neurology. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Professor Wolfgang Grisold, President of the World Federation of Neurology. He's here to talk about the WFN's most meaningful global campaigns. World Brain Day 2025, taking place on 22nd July, and why this year's theme, Brain Health for All Ages, couldn't be more timely. So, Professor Grisold, welcome, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Ksenia, for meeting me in this broadcast. I'm very excited to give an interview, and I'm very excited, even more excited, to speak about the World Brain Day. As you mentioned, the World Federation, with 125 member societies, is promoting neurology, quality neurology, and brain health worldwide. One of our tasks is, and this was not my idea, but that one of a colleague during the World Congress in Vienna 2013, to establish a World Brain Day. And we did over the years. We had several attempts, like joining with societies. This was successful or not successful, own topics. And for the past 4 years since my presidency, we've used as the main topic brain health. This is important because brain health is taken up by the WHO, it's taken up by many societies in the moment, it's taken up by the World Federation of Neurology. And brain health is an encompassing expression to which we come later. And to put a special subtopic under brain health, we have used the first year brain health. The second year we had brain health and disability. The third year it was brain health and prevention. And this year it's brain health for all ages. This wording, for all ages, is also taken from the United Nations ECOSOC SDGs, where for all ages is an important wording, and we think that neurologic diseases are different in different parts of the world.
Excellent. That is actually very exciting information. Could you tell us a little bit more about why World Brain Day is important, significant initiative, for the WFN as well as for the global neurology community?
Yeah, the World Brain Day, I would see it's a wonderful trajectory to bring awareness, knowledge to the world. So this sounds a little bit exaggerated, but we have 125 member societies, and when we develop a World Brain Day, in the past years, we have communicated very intensively with the regions, so the regions know what their needs are. We don't know exactly what the African region needs in regard to brain day or the Asian ones. And then they receive from us the so-called toolkit. And the toolkit is something like they receive a set of slides they can use for their own campaign. They receive material, how to make a press conference, how to talk to the press, how to invite people. And that's very important because if you make a campaign, you need tools. And the World Federation of Neurology for a long time has developed those tools, and we are happy and glad to share them with our community. And all of you who are looking at the World Federation website under World Brain Day, you will find a link to the tools and you can download. We have no copyright on those things. So if you want to convert it into Finnish, into I don't know which language, feel free to do so.
Wow, that's a lot of information, and I think our listeners will look at that. And you've mentioned the theme of this year's World Brain Day, Brain Health for All Ages, which is incredibly powerful. Could you tell us again a little bit more why this was chosen and what kind of message does it send, especially as we work alongside the WHO and the UN to prioritize brain health globally?
Yes, that's a very, let's say, a complicated question. I will try to put some order in my answer. The subtopics of brain health, as I said, was disability first, then prevention. It is now brain health for all ages. I want to say, if you would ask me now, you didn't, but if you would ask me, what is my very preferred topic? It's disability. Because from that campaign, we learned so much, how little we know about disabled persons. And what's even more frightening is we learned that specialist society like diseases like stroke, epilepsy, have very little idea how many people are disabled. We concentrate at therapy at best, hopefully at prevention, but nobody looks at the permanent damages. Maybe the stroke people to some extent. But to come back for all ages. So when we sat together and created that the topic, it was clear that we need experts who speak about neurologic diseases in different age groups. So there is the age group of neonatals, and there's the age group of children, adolescents, adults, and the aging and the very old. And of course, we all know that there are different diseases like, let's say, stroke in elderly, not necessarily, but more, and some children's affections like brain damage, prenatal brain damage in children. So this is a very important thing. This is very clear. We know it, but we never use it. And then we have our new epidemiology working group, and we asked the chair of the working group how he sees that in the distribution of age in regard to the regions. And of course, something turned out that we were aware of, and you could look at this table in our publication in the Journal of Neurologic Sciences. There's a link on the website. You just have to click it on. There's a big table. And it shows, of course, that the distribution varies very much in regard to the age groups and the regions. Not only that, also the possibilities and the chances for the person suffering from disease vary very much. And I think that's a very good, it's absolutely clear what I'm saying. And if you look at the GPT, it's all written in the table. But I think it needs to get in our brain that this is highly relevant.
Thank you for explaining. This is indeed a complex topic. But the World Brain Day campaign is structured around 5 key action areas, which include awareness, education, prevention, access to care, and advocacy. Could you tell us a little bit more about these pillars and how do they translate into real-world impact?
Yeah, also a complex question. So we have key action areas. That means we try to define how we should tackle this problem of brain health for all ages. And the pillars here that were developed by our committee, first of all, there is awareness. And I can assure you that awareness for neurologic diseases in elderly is not everywhere, neither for children. So the general awareness of that is important, and that's one of the mission of the World Brain Day, because it sends out the message, take care of that. My favorite word, and I keep repeating myself, is education. The best way to get these messages across is by education. Now, education has something forceful that you have to do something and someone will educate you. But I mean, education is also a chance. Somebody takes care that you receive knowledge and awareness on something. And it's important that we use, not only we, but also the national societies, our member societies, put effort into that it is important to have brain health. It is important to take care of equalities, inequalities in regard to age groups and in regard to the regions. Now, prevention is something that we should all do all the time. We cannot, and people usually think of prevention when it's already too late. But we know that prevention is a powerful tool, and I would say seeing all the non-strokes that occurred since the blood pressure therapies were installed is a huge success. I think Russia is a good example where hypertension campaigns lowered the risk of stroke and the risk of death. And I think this is a very simple measure. It's not only neurologic, it's also internal medicine, it's cardiology. But finally, people have lower blood pressure and have less neurologic damage. I'm sure there's more prophylaxis. I mean, some exposure to, I don't know, environment. It's difficult not to be exposed, but toxic influences can be a problem. Very interesting infections, thank you. But also, I think I have not talked, I've not mentioned it before, but I think it's also important that we have so-called recreational drugs. I mean, that's an awful word. It means you take a drug to be happy or not happy. Usually this ends in a catastrophe. I just say alcoholism, drug abuse, or amphetamines that produce cocaine. These are all things that you could, if you don't use them, you have some kind of prophylaxis of not receiving some diseases. But I think prevention is something that is also propagated by the WHO, and it's something that has even more powerful dimensions than we can imagine. Now we come to the next point, that is
access to care.
Access to care, and I would say access to care is our main, or one of our main concerns worldwide. We know that even in countries of very low income, there are machines you could potentially do a thrombolysis, you could potentially, I don't know what, but people don't have the money to pay it for several reasons. It could be that the country is too poor. If the health budget is so small that they cannot afford anything, it's clear it cannot be paid. If there is not an insurance system, if there are people are not insured for various reasons, that just brings me also to the very important aspect to always think increasingly of migrants. You may know that according to the WHO, 230 million migrants are worldwide, and 120 or 130 are running away or fleeing from armed conflicts. And these people are usually not insured, barely cared for, and even worse is to be stateless, because then nobody's responsible for you, which is the cheapest way to deal with that. But that's really a concern of the World Federation of Neurology. And the fifth column is advocacy. Now, advocacy is used now by everyone. We have written a book about advocacy a few years ago in Oxford University Press, and we still don't know what it means exactly, despite writing a book. So I would say my explanation usually is, and this may be the right one or the wrong one, is the Latin word advocacy, advocare, means to speak for someone. And in the true sense of the word, an advocate is someone who speaks for a client. And in kind of this sense, neurologists would be the advocates for patients or not patients if it's prophylaxis with neurological diseases. And advocacy campaigns are important to promote neurology. And it also turns out increasingly, and I'm very happy to see that also neurologic societies like the American Academy of Neurology, the European Academy of Neurology, the World Federation also try to train young people or middle-aged people in advocacy. Something you can train, you can make aware, and to promote the idea that it's not only prescribing drugs, taking the blood pressure, doing the reflexes, but you're an advocate for the patient.
These are indeed very important pillars. What about the term brain health? What does that really mean in practical terms for individuals, for families, and for societies?
Yeah, thank you for this question. This is even less well answerable as advocacy, because brain health is understood by many people with different meanings. So there is a very powerful WHO definition which kind of describes brain health as a state where someone feels good, is in a good condition, and has a positive aspect of life, which is lots of social aspects and maybe psychological aspects, which may be true. For neurology, usually, if we speak of brain health, most neurologists would answer that you have a normally functioning brain, you have normally functioning emotions, etc. There were some who extended very much according to the wish of the WHO into the social spheres, the psychiatric spheres. I personally think what we need to cooperate, and this wish of mine has already created loud exclamations of protest. We need to align with mental health because in both a healthy brain and in mental health, you need a person who is social functioning. And a person who has a neurologic deficit in the brain or psychiatric is not social functioning. So that's a good problem. And we have to strive towards that.
Right, right. That's thank you. That's a very good explanation.
Yes, I think the social functioning is something that we have implicit. We realize if somebody functions socially, but we don't use it as a parameter. I think we should.
Okay. So for this year's campaign, the WFN is also bringing together to participate 6 regional organizations from Africa to Asia, Oceania. How important is this global regional collaboration for advancing brain health across the life course?
Well, the World Federation of Neurology is a federation of not only member societies, but these societies come from regions. And we also have a board of regional directors who meet every 3 months to report on the progress or non-progress or developments in the region. So if you look at the region, this is North America, which is well off in many ways in regard to health. We have Latin America, which is a bit more mixed, but has a high commitment to neurology with their membership. We have Asia, which is a large open book because there are countries with an extreme social and welfare system and others that don't have that. We have Europe. Europe is taken care by the very strong regional society, by the EN, in regard to neurology. Yet, and having been participating in European WHO meetings, there's also concern about many things like access and also like out-of-pocket expenses. And we must not forget that we have large populations in Europe that are not as well off as others. And thirdly, there's Africa, and I took this as the last point because I probably will never stop speaking about Africa. So Africa is, of course, the most inhomogeneous of all these areas. We have a comparatively well-organized north. We have a comparatively well-organized south. And in between, we have sub-Saharan Africa, which has all kinds of problems in regard to health, to population, to diseases. I just want to point out 2 things to that topic. One is that according to the statistics presently, out of the 8 billion people living on this world, a quarter are children under 14 years. And this comes as some African countries have up to 50% of children as population. So this is something that is a neglected group. And the other group, of course, is age. And due to development and due to medicine, people get older, which is excellent. Presently, we have 800 million which are over 65. And in the next 20 years, it's 1.6 million. And we have to take care of that. And taking care is not just palliative care. We need to have health and brain health also for persons who are aged, who are fragile, who fall, who may be more or less demented and cognitive impaired. And I think this is very important for the future plans.
Mm-hmm. And probably the coming together of regional collaborations from the different regions where the situation is so different will maybe facilitate the exchange and facilitate some kind of further collaboration.
We have a German saying that is like a water drop on a hot stone. Mm-hmm. So we have, of course, it's wonderful that the continents cooperate and the regions cooperate. I can only say for the World Federation, we train persons in Africa in 4 training centers, which seems a little, but over the years, a number of neurologists come out who are devoted to do the same, to teach the brain and get more. And we are very happy to hear from our African colleagues that increasingly universities in Africa take up neurology. So it's self-propelling, and that's one of the most wonderful results you can have. As we know, there are also programs between continents. So let's say exchange program, not only for neurology, for medicine. We all know that for some of those programs, there's the field brain drain, that people go somewhere and don't come back because understandably, if you have better living conditions, they will stay. And definitely also the WHO, the United Nations have programs to improve the exchange of things between continents. But I'm not an expert on that, and I can only say that much more can be done.
Great, thank you. And Professor Grisold, what would you say to healthcare professionals, neurologists, and different organizations listening today? How can they get involved in World Brain Day this year, 2025?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. And that's what we want, really. We want everyone to be involved. So, I mean, first of all, take it, look at it, and see what the brain health is for. I hope I tried to explain a little bit. The idea is to bring the notion of brain health in the community. If you're not a neurologist, then of course it is important to listen to that. And we thank you for listening it. But we as neurologists, of course, we are familiar with the brain. We think we are familiar. But it is so important to get the message across that this organ is the most important of the human being, and we have to take care of that. If you work in an institution, in a hospital, maybe at some place, then try to communicate the idea of brain health, and a local brain day can move people, can raise awareness. You can do this without any cost. You can use our toolkit. We hope you do. If you do that, and if you raise some kind of campaign or successful event, please send us a report with photos. Of course, we have to select if we have received many reports, or we will be happy to publish that and show what ideas you have to promote brain health.
Oh, definitely. I think such reports are extremely helpful for, I think, an exchange between neurologists worldwide, because they are published on the WFN website, and they're accessible for people to see what other people are doing.
Not only the professionals, I mean, we have patients, we have carers, and there's a new term I think that you're all aware of, that this is patients with lived experience. That means patients who have the disease, who have not only the disease, but all the social sequelae, the lack of access, the drug problems, the problems of care, the psychosocial problems. This is important to bring forward, because we're not treating the brain only, we're treating the individual.
That's great. And from a personal point of view, what has been most meaningful to you about leading this campaign as WFN president? And you spoke a little bit about one of your topics that mean most to you, the brain health and disability, but perhaps you could elaborate.
I mean, this is not a difficult question, because I don't do since my presidency. I installed it with many difficulties, and it was quite difficult to bring into the leadership at the time of the World Federation that you should spend money on people making aware of brain health, because at this time it seemed to be unnecessary. Now the World Brain Day has become a tradition, and despite many concerns and many problems, as all projects have, we have a large number of followers. And that large number of followers is that it's a success. People listen. And even if they take away only a few bites and sound bites of what we do, that's important, because it raises awareness. As you said, my favorite topic, all of it is favorite, but disability is something that we as neurologists are not enough aware of, and that we must take care more in the future. And we must also stimulate our member societies to put this in their heart, to look for those persons.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Grisold. You've shared your insights, and that's very meaningful. And thank you for leading the charge in this important campaign. We look forward to seeing the global neurology community come together on July 22nd to champion brain health for all ages.
Yes.
Yes.
Ksenia, thank you very much for interviewing me. I enjoyed it.
And to everyone listening, stay tuned to the WFN website and the WCN World Congress of Neurology channels for updates, tools, and inspirations as we celebrate World Brain Day 2025. Until next time, thank you for joining us on the WCN 2025 podcast series.